This is the Creative Spirits Podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Benji. Thank you again for joining me. So, today I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Jessica Silverman, and I'm going to just read a little bit about her. She's a spiritual wellness expert to help heal past trauma and inner child wounds. Through a trauma informed approach, she enables women to come alive in her creative passion without sacrificing money, time, or energy. She stepped away from a six-figure career in venture capital in San Francisco to start her own venture, all inspired initially from a podcast, and now is the host of the A.L.I.V.E podcast with Jessica Silverman. So I hope you stay tuned and watch this beautiful episode with her. It was really touching and inspiring. So please stay tuned to watch the rest. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Cheryl. Thank you so much for having me. It's always divine to speak with you. I
Oh,
just I
likewise.
love being in your energy.
Oh, I love being in yours. And I just wanted to first talk about how we met. Um, Somehow the algorithm on Instagram brought us together, which is
Yes.
what I love about social media is, especially when you're going through some tough times, some shaky times, you're brought together with people who are there to support you and who are like-minded. And I'm so happy that my art brought us together and I was able to get to know you better. And we just slowly began to talk and began to see we had so much in common, even though like I'm in California, you're in Florida. So
Yes.
like opposite parts of the
Yes. Well, I
state.
did live 4 years in California, so we have that in common too.
Yes, exactly. And we'll get into that soon. And I just loved how we were able to connect, and then I took, and we'll talk about that soon, I took some of your courses and I began to see like you had so many amazing healing modalities in what you were doing. And I want to hear your story. I have you on my podcast because you are such an inspiration.
Thank you.
And to see you go to step away from a six-figure career in venture capital in San Francisco to start your own venture that started with a podcast, right?
Yep. Yes.
So please tell us your story. Tell us more about that and how you got here.
Yeah, I have chills just hearing you say all this because it's been so long since that happened. I stepped away, been almost 10 years, end of 2014 into 2015. My now husband, then just boyfriend, we weren't even engaged at the time. We were living in Chicago. So I'm originally from Florida. And then I spent 10 years away. So 6 years in Chicago. And I traveled for work. I worked in corporate finance, I worked in public accounting. And one of my accounts in public accounting was in San Francisco. And I would spend like 2 weeks out of our busy season, living in San Francisco. And there was just something about, and that's what attracted me to you as well. Speaking of our connection, I love art and creatives. And like, I'm not a painter and a beautiful artist like you are, but like, I've always been around artists. Like even my dear childhood friend from kindergarten, like she's a local artist now and she's got her own business. Like I've always been around that community of artisans. And I think just the energy of like the venture capital and creatives and entrepreneurs. And then I worked in corporate finance and it was like we were driving, it was probably an hour and a half on a good day, round trip to and from the city. We lived on the East Bay of San Francisco. And sorry, I kind of get a little ahead. There's so many layers to the story. But anyway, it was my idea to move to California when we were in Chicago. I had paintings, speaking of art, from my travels. Whenever I travel, I always go to like local farmers markets or just downtown if I see an artist selling paintings. And so in my apartment at the time in Chicago, I had California, I had the Bay Bridge, I had like a trolley car, like the California state flag. Like I just always, and I still to this day, like adore California and just the energy and the nature and the people and the food and the culture, just everything about it. It's such a beautiful place. And it was always my dream to live in California. So anyway, long story short, I told my boyfriend at the time, like, let's move. We didn't have jobs. We didn't have anything. So we moved there with nothing but like a U-Haul, whatever we could fit in that U-Haul that was hitched to our Passat at the time, like a really small sedan. And we drove cross country from Chicago to San Francisco. And I worked in venture capital for 1 year. But again, the spirit of entrepreneurship and this, and I just felt dead inside. It was the time I made the most money in my career. I was making well over 6 figures. I was like in a high management position at a venture capital company, ones that were invested in Google and Waze and all these right hot companies in tech. And yet I just felt so dead inside, like completely just dead, like longing for something more. I remember I used to have a journal at my desk, and I used to journal all the time, all my dreams and my desires, because that's my art is in writing, and poetry and prose, and my posts and my blogs, like that's sort of my art to the world. And I just used to dream. And one day it was Christmas. We had 2 weeks off. They gave us 2 weeks for Christmas break. And I literally had a major panic attack and a mental breakdown. I told my husband, I can't go back there. I can't. After I had all that time off, I just realized what I didn't have. And the reason why I was inspired by a podcast is because we spent so much time in the car. Like I said, hour and a half on a good day, 3 hours on a bad day. And I was seeking for something. I'm like, there has to be more to life. So I remember I Googled in Apple Podcasts, like spirituality, because I'm very spiritual, and business. Because something, it was like, I wanted to do something different. I didn't know what. And I wanted to marry the two worlds. And I found a podcast that was about spirituality and business. And I started listening to more and more shows. Like that one opened me to different types of shows. And like, I don't know if you know, Waking Up with Ryan, he's also in California, and Gabby Bernstein. Actually, they both were on an episode. Funny you read from her deck, because it gave me chills. That is where I started. And I just remember them telling their story of how they stepped away and what they do and why, and they see more to life and about purpose and passion. And I was just like, wow, like, and someone said it on a podcast too, you can always go back, because I have the education, right? I have a bachelor's and a master's in finance. I could always go back, but the potential for something greater is even more, right? Because I have that to lean on. And that's, I think, what just empowered me. I told my husband I have to quit. So we came back Christmas break. I literally walked in and I just said, like, I'm done. Like, I'll give you whatever time you need to transition, because it was like our busiest time of the year, like tax season. And I didn't want to leave them high and dry. They ended up letting me go before the time. So they fired me because they didn't want me to have more benefits. It was like in February. I was supposed to be there till April, part time, and they let me go. And I remember that day they let me go, I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, we live in the most financially, we live in the most expensive city. And my husband at the time wasn't making that much money given the area that we lived in and the high cost of living. But there was also a peace, kind of like we talked about before, like even amidst the chaos, there was a peace in my heart that I was like excited for this new chapter of my life. I was excited for the possibilities of what could be by me taking that leap of faith and trusting in God and spirit and faith and my callings and everything that I was feeling intuitively inside of me. So I'm sorry, I know that was a lot, but I like to give all the color and background
I love
of my
that.
story and how I got to where I am today.
Yes, and I won a class with you. Uh, you posted something about um, putting your name in, and I never really win much. So I was like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
why not? And it
Yes.
was such an honor to win and to be able to do a series of classes with you. And what I notice is that you have um, all these healing modalities you incorporate in your work, and you're also about healing our past trauma. I know you're about doing that through art as well. And I have taken, like I said, several courses with you to incorporate, where you incorporate all these beautiful healing modalities. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my focus is, as you said, past trauma, healing trauma. A lot of it, of course, based on my own personal story. But before I go into that, I want to explain like the 4 types of trauma, because I think that will bring more color into, again, the work that I do. And just, in case anyone doesn't, understand, there's a lot of misconceptions around what really trauma is. And everyone has a different perspective. My perspective is, and I know we've talked about this a lot in the sisterhood, is that everyone carries some type of trauma, right? And that's why I say there's 4 types. There's big T, which is what we think of typically when we think of trauma, like rape or loss or grief, big traumatic events that happen in our family, catastrophe, losing a home, a storm, something like that. Then there's little t trauma, which is what they call covert. And that's sort of a bit more of my story, where it's like ever since birth and childhood, small ways that were traumatizing and triggering to you that collectively over time become almost bigger than a big T trauma. We also have ancestral trauma, which is passed on back up to 7 generations. And that's based on science and studies as well, that it can pass, but it can also move forward up to 7 generations. That's the positive aspect and what I speak about a lot. Just like we can be triggered and carry trauma from our ancestors, we can also break the cycle to heal up to 7 generations in the future. And then there's collective trauma, which we all, and that's why I say we all been through it, because we all went through the pandemic. That is a collective traumatic event, the state of the world now, the divisiveness, right? That's all a big collective trauma as well. And so with Live Vibrant, the reason why I have all these different modalities and what Live Vibrant is really rooted in is helping people not only heal that trauma, because I don't believe we're ever fully healed. We carry it with us our entire life, but to build resiliency through these moments, to learn how to rise above that, how to find yourself again, how to come home to yourself, because your soul knows the way. I believe God's spirit knows the way. So to be attuned to that voice and not the voice outside that is fear-based, that is fear-mongering, that is trying to keep us, in control and scared and afraid, and just kind of surrendering to a place that is bigger than ourselves. And the reason why I incorporate all these different modalities, because my theory, especially with healing trauma or any type of life challenge, let's replace trauma, because a lot of people hear that word and they're like, I don't have trauma. It's kind of very still taboo to be talked about. Any type of challenge in your life is through expression, is through the creative arts, is through, again, releasing that. So a lot of trauma therapy is founded in release. So there's TRE, trauma release exercises, where you shake your physical body, right? Somatic movement, whether that's through art therapy, and you're one of the teachers, my sisterhood, learning how to channel that, which is, again, how we connected. I saw your beautiful painting of one of the hostages, and that moved me. And then how you told me the story of how you gifted it to the family. And even though they won't get, that person back, it brings them a sense of solace and calm, right, amidst the storm. I also incorporate a lot of spiritual practice, like you did at the beginning with pulling oracle and tarot cards, again, to unearth what is already inside of you, right? And again, I do believe in the mysticism and, the law of attraction as well. I do believe in cosmic divine assignments. Learning your divine design is a big part of my sisterhood as well, right? Learning your human design, your natal chart, and how that all not only explains who you are, but it validates, like, oh, that's why I've always felt off around these kind of people, or that's why, I'm always triggered by this. Like, and the more you understand and have that awareness about yourself through creative expression, through learning spiritual modalities, we're able to heal because we understand ourselves. We can forgive ourselves. We can show ourselves compassion. And then we know how to navigate the relationships in our life, because then we see others for who they are, right? Instead of judging, right? We accept, right? Acceptance, tolerance. So that's really my goal with that movement. And again, in sisterhood, because I think, as I told you, you pulled the card about you're loved and supported. And I told you that really hit my heart. My biggest goal for the sisterhood is for people to feel safe to do that, to express themselves, to share those untold stories and emotions that have just been you've been harboring and eating you alive. I have a chronic condition, and I can even show you my hand is still all burnt from my eczema. I've had terrible flare-ups recently. And I know, and again, because I've done this work for so many years, I'm holding on to something. And the Live Vibrant Sisterhood is about letting go. It's about feeling safe. It's about feeling held, feeling seen, feeling supported, feeling loved as you are, and then learning who you are so you can love yourself too.
Yes, I agree, and I felt that, and I felt it was perfect timing for me. I really needed that around that time because I did kind of feel alone in the world. Except for in my little community. But to have that felt very it just felt calming and gave me a sense of peace and, okay, I can be me here, and it's
Yeah. And
okay.
I like having the different again because not everything is my zone of genius, right? Like you're a painter and we had Jules who was a somatic yoga and breathwork teacher. I had a human design expert. Like I call in, right, the tribe and everyone gets to highlight their zone of genius and what their right ikigai, which is, your reason for being in the world. And that's something I talk about, all the time. And that's the same approach I have with my one-on-one clients, that I work with all the time. It's don't do me, do you. So when you have a variety, kind of like a recipe, and you can try different things, you can start to feel what resonates with you. And that's my goal is, out of the 8 weeks, in all the different classes, is if you find just one modality that speaks to your heart and helps you heal and gets you closer to really understanding yourself and being able to work through resiliency, then I've done my job, because that's what I wanted when I was in that place. So
Absolutely. Me as well, when I was going through, just bouts of, like, depression, and I wasn't feeling myself, and it was art that helped me get out of it, and the colors, because I feel colors are very
yes,
healing.
color therapy is big for me. That's why live vibrant to me is
The vibe,
Beth's
yes,
term. Yeah.
I love that, and I love the painting behind you. Whenever I see that, it
Yes.
makes
Oh,
me
my friend who's an artist, another artist friend I didn't even think about when I was talking about that. She painted that for me based on one of my photos. She made like a pop art graphic. That's my cover photo for my
so beautiful. We
podcast.
should give her a shout out. What's her name? I love supporting artists.
Yes, her name is V Addy, Addy, Branique.
Beautiful. So if you guys are just listening, you could go to my YouTube channel and you could see the
Yeah.
beautiful painting behind
I
Jessica.
can send you her Instagram link if you want to put it in.
Yeah, I would love
She's
to. It's
yeah,
really
she's got a business here in Florida.
yeah, so that's when I started to try to figure out, okay, what other modalities are there besides art that I could get into that could help, like sound baths and yoga. And, recently I just discovered human design, and I think I heard about, you
Yes.
just brought it up too. So I've been hearing it
Yes.
from different places. And I took a class with this other artist that I know who's
Mhm.
teaching it. And it's been really eye-opening, and I never heard of it. And you think because I've been in this world for so long, I think I know
Yeah.
all the different modalities, but I don't, and it's so exciting to see and experience a new one. And my question to you is, do you have a favorite one, the one that's your go-to, that it just works for you every time you're, like, in a rough spot and you're like, "Okay, this is what I'm gonna do to help me move forward,
Yeah.
move the energy."
So funny you mentioned human design because that is one of my favorites. I don't talk about it enough that I actually use that a lot with my one-on-one clients. And I
Mm.
wanted to teach a whole session on that this sister and I didn't, but the next round I definitely will because I'm so well versed in it that I never call myself an expert in it, but like I use it so much in my work. And it's changed my life significantly. So much. Funny enough, my husband's learned about it through me and he recently got promoted to a director role, and so he's managing a team. And that's the first thing he did is he sent them the calculator so everyone could learn their human design because then they could learn their work styles. And what he found is that his team, he has one of everything, even a reflector who's like 0.1% of the population. And he said the team loved it. Like they understand each other better. Like I was actually at a golf event. He had a work trip out in Boise where the company's headquartered. And we all went to Top Golf and I got to meet them. And I knew their design because he told me. And I was like, oh, like I felt like I already knew them when I had never met them before. So that's what's really beautiful about that. I can't name one, so I'm gonna name three because again, I like the variety and why I have that in my sisterhood. Number one for me is the tarot and oracle cards. I have been using that in my personal practice. Every morning, I've gotten away from it the last few months just because of life. But I use it with all my clients on every session. Every session in the sisterhood, we either opened or closed with it as like an opening or closing ritual. So connecting to my tarot and oracle cards is a divine practice. Secondly is, and I'll use this all together because it's all interconnected, human design natal chart and north node astrology. They're all sort of connected. But all those three, again, I use in my personal practice and with my clients. It really just, again, it's your divine design. It's where the cosmos and the stars were, right? It's who you were born to be, right? Essentially. And thirdly is nature, like forest bathing. You mentioned sound bathing and allowing the frequencies. It's just connecting to the earth every single day. And that could be because I'm a Taurus. I have Taurus and Virgo placements in my chart. So earth is very much dominant in my design, but I have to spend time every single day, either putting my feet on the grass or going for a walk or touching a tree or just being. Like, the longer I walk, the more, sometimes 20 minutes, I can't really unravel everything that's inside of me. And I'll just walk for miles. And that's so therapeutic for me. It's just being in nature, connecting to nature. Like, I speak to the trees, I speak to the land. Like, I just have this divine connection with Mother Earth. And that to me is what's healed me through my chronic condition. It's been 2.5 years. And my walks every single day, I used to walk around a lake when I lived in Boca, when I was at my worst. And like, that was the only time I felt like myself. I would just walk for an hour and through these scrub areas and trails. And like, that was just so incredibly healing for me.
Yes, I feel nature also is very healing for me. I used to live by the beach before I got married, and that's just walking on the sand
Yes.
and,
And
feeling, the waves against my feet. And then even when I go walks in my neighborhood, I touch the tree or
yeah.
like roses. I love smelling roses, and
Oh,
they
yes.
say smell the
Me too.
roses.
Yeah, stop and smell the roses.
Stop and smell.
Literally, I like to touch the petals. Like, I feel the
Yes.
softness, the petals. You mentioned color. Like, to me, being in nature is also color therapy. Like, seeing the color. I mean, granted, though I live in Florida, we don't really have seasons. It's always like green trees, but just seeing the colors around me and just nature and cars and just your environment, really being attuned to your environment.
Exactly. And, just um, putting um, nature inside my house. I don't like fake plants. That's one
Same.
of my
Yeah.
pet peeves when I see it, because it collects dust and it's just not real. So I
Yeah.
put flowers everywhere, even pick the leaves from the trees and put it in the flower arrangement. And uh, that's very important for me to have nature inside my house as well. And I do feel it's healing. And like you said, colors, like for me, colors are everything. Like, I just filled my house with colors, and it just
Mhm.
helped boost my mood, my kids' mood, my husband's. Like, you see a difference.
Oh, yeah. Even the way I dress. See, I've got my crazy colored tie-dye. You can't see my skirt. It's the same. I've got like pink and orange and green, and I always wear the rainbow.
I love it.
Just like they say, eating the rainbow, right, can also be very, of course, healing. And of course, it helps you like enjoy the food more, like have a more mindful and intentional experience.
Yeah, exactly. I love colorful food. Like,
Me too.
everyone in my family always comments on, "Wow, your salads are so colorful." I'm like, "Yeah, well, you want to feel good when you're eating whatever it is that you want
Exactly.
to do."
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Um, so you bring up mental health a lot, which is also something I talk about frequently. Since I spoke about before, I've gone through depression, and I have seen my father had gone through it a lot, and I saw him suffer through it. What has been your journey? Like, what makes you talk about mental health and post about it so much?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think first, speaking of divine design and human design, is the more I started to tap into those tools, I learned who and why I felt the way I did. Like, I think for so many years, it's like I was depressed and I didn't know why. Like, I didn't even acknowledge myself as depressed. I just thought, like, I'm sad, which I believe everybody has moments of depression. But then there's like chronic levels where it's like you're just not functioning the way you could, because it's like I always envision depression as like a dark cloud. It just feels like a heavy cloud, hanging over you. And I also suffer from anxiety. So it's kind of like that's anticipation of the future. to me, depression a lot is kind of like past, letting the past trauma haunt you, neither of which is kind of living in the present moment. And so I think I realized that a lot through the tools. But what really sparked for me, and I want to share this too, in the pandemic, I always say it brought up stuff that was already there. We just weren't aware. I was listening to a Hay House Summit where Trevor Hall spoke, and he's one of my favorite musicians. I had no idea who he was at the time. And he said these words: I was depressed and I didn't know why. I didn't have a reason to be depressed. I had a great childhood. I had all the things. And like, I didn't have this big reason to be depressed. I didn't have an alcoholic parent or, something that might have, felt traumatizing. And that opened the door for me to explore why I felt that way. And then I started learning about trauma, right? And again, the 4 types of trauma. And it's almost like when you say something or put it out into existence and you start exploring the curiosity, the universe keeps opening more, reveals more doors for you. And that's what happened. I started talking about mental health when I was actually in a much better mental state. And the universe is like, oh, you want to teach trauma? You want to teach mental health? Well, now let me show you why you felt this way your whole life. And I learned more about my family. And I learned more about, not just the story of the Jews, which is, again, a huge collective trauma. And again, how we connected, right, post October 7th, and learning the stories of the Holocaust from my ancestors. But in my own family's trauma, my uncles are my angels. I lost them when I was 2 something years old. I didn't even get to know them. But both of my father's brothers were murdered. And so and I was born really in that space. And my grandfather died in those years as well, like in the early 80s. And that's been a trauma that I don't think my family has ever recovered from. It's always this like, what would have happened if they were so young? They were in their early 30s, if they were still alive, and all the family I could have had, but we didn't, and I have goosebumps as I'm talking about this. Like, all this came after hearing Trevor on the podcast. And I learned what I was holding, but I didn't know. Like, when I was a child, all my childhood trauma, like, I felt misunderstood. I used to sit in my room a lot and just read books, and I wanted to be alone because I felt like I couldn't connect with other children, or not as many. Like, I only had a few select friends that I felt safe with. And again, I didn't know why. I was like, is there something? I always thought something was wrong with me. But the more I learned about who I am and why I'm different and why I'm an outlier, because I'm meant to be a leader, and that's a beautiful thing, and a creative, and to bring something different to the world, and to break the cycle of my own ancestral trauma. And I just got so passionate about that, thinking there's probably so many other people like me that they don't know why, and they don't know what they're holding, and they're living with either mental illness or a chronic illness, a physical illness, that 9 times out of 10 is a result of unhealed trauma. And so I learned that's my mission and my purpose here on earth, is to help people through depression, anxiety, just this unknowing, this, right? This just sitting and living with all of these like untold emotions, right? Unexpressed emotions, right? And like they always say, I know I've mentioned this in sisterhood a lot, what is not expressed becomes depressed. So not living your purpose, not expressing, saying what you want to say, or expressing it through art or through dance or through yoga or through human design or any spiritual modality, something bigger than ourselves, is what creates that. And so I wanted people to find a way and find the tools and find the support and find the resources to get that help they need. Because for so many years I was floundering and trying to do it on my own, right? They call it like lone wolfing. And that's the worst feeling, I think, because that re-triggers all of that past trauma of like, I was a little kid and I never, right, connected with anyone, or I tried to speak and nobody heard me, right? All these things. And I still live with some of these core wounds at times, right? Especially being on social media. It's like, why cricket? It's like, I just spoke from the heart. But I always know just like you, like the right people connect. Like, I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. I'm different for a reason, and that's beautiful. And that's what carries me through those days of depression and anxiety, is I have a purpose bigger than those emotions. They're fleeting, and they come and I'm triggered and I live with them, and they're not, right. Things like that. I'm never going to get over the death of my uncles that I never got to know. Right. But I can be resilient through it, and I can show strength just like the Jewish people do with everything they've been through. to still love life. And that's why my podcast is called Alive.
Wow. First of all, I'm sorry for the trauma of the loss that your family had to go through. Um, you know, we've experienced similar things like that in our family. Um, and the quote that I remember that I just had posted in the Creative Spirits group, which you're a part of on
Yeah, I love it.
Facebook, and one of the artists on there, she posted it, Beth. She's amazing. She says, remember that the opposite of depression is not joy, it is expression. So
Yeah,
create, 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 for it is the soul's medicine. I just
soul's
love that so much.
yeah,
I had to repost it and
that's
I
beautiful.
got such a great reaction from it. And it just reminded me of what everything you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's
I,
giving the soul a voice and not like the outside world, right? It's letting your soul speak through you. In fact, that's what this picture says. I don't know if you could see on her headphones, the picture behind me. It
yeah,
says,
I can't see what it's
listen to
written.
the listen to the whispers within.
Ah, I
She
love
must
that.
have seen that somewhere that I wrote it online. And that's a big part of, just attuning to your soul, because your soul doesn't have all those emotions. Your soul just is, right? And it's attuned to the light. All the other stuff is just it's not real, it's an illusion of the mind, like the Buddhists say.
It is. And I feel like once you are comfortable with yourself and who you are, and you realize that not everyone is for you, that's when you really begin to live your authentic self. And like you said, the right people come to you. Because I struggle too with that, where I was like, oh, this person won't like me if I talk about this or if I post that, or but
Yes,
I've learned the people who I admire the most are the ones who just speak up and they're
me
just
too.
their authentic selves and they don't give a crap about what anyone thinks, and they start attracting the right people
Yes.
around them or the people that's for them.
Yeah.
And but when we try to please everyone, we end up hurting ourselves from my experience, and that makes you become more depressed.
I trust me, I get it. I mean, again, that's how we connected. I forgot what I was gonna say. I was gonna say something along with with people pleasing. I always say when you try to please everyone, you please no one. And you definitely don't please yourself. But
Absolutely.
beyond that, that's exactly how I felt after October 7th. It was just like I spent weeks like, oh my gosh, like I have an online business. I can't say anything. I can't express. Like I was in so much pain, and I was worried about saying something because people hear the word Israel and it's triggering. And it's like, then I just got to a point where just like the people you admire, I was thinking about who I admire. And it's people that are just speaking their truth. I'm like, this is my family. Like my parents were both born in Israel. All my dad's family still lives in. It's like, I know who we are. Like you said, when you know yourself, I know who we are and I know our truth. So I felt so comfortable. I mean, it took a little while, but like now I'm just open about it. I spoke about it on my podcast. I've had numerous episodes about it. But the year was hard because I lost a lot of people. But then I gained beautiful souls like you, right? I found other women and other people that did love and support me and understood our story and understood, right? And they were open to learning if they didn't know. And those are the kind of people just like me. Like I'm the same way. Like I love learning, which is why I have all the different modalities. I love learning Hindu beliefs and Buddhist beliefs and Jewish beliefs. Like it's not just about where I came from, because I believe we're really all just walking each other home.
Yeah.
We all have so many similarities, but the ego mind, right? It sees the division,
Yeah.
but really we're all human. We all have the same desires.
Right, right. And I have family who both live in Iran and they live in Israel, opposite, extremes of the spectrum. And it's a struggle to see like just what's going on, and it's heartbreaking. And I really pray that there is a better, more light, in the Middle East, and
Yes.
just that it will just get better with time. So
Amen.
we shall
Amen.
see. But so what is your advice for this creative spirits out there?
Yeah, so it's a little technical, but I like to bring in some of the science behind it too, because, these are all rooted in facts. But it's three things I learned that have helped me a lot, and I'll explain kind of what they are. But it's based on the polyvagal theory. which is about regulating your nervous system. And again, trauma healing. So self-regulation, and I'll dive deeper into each one. Self-regulation, co-regulation, which is community, which is why I have my sisterhood. And then spiritual rituals, connecting to something bigger than yourself, right? Self, others, world is basically those three things. So by self-regulation, it's everything you talk about. It's everything the sisterhood is about, but for yourself, right? Is learning how to find self-compassion, how to learn your own divine design, how to self-regulate when you don't have the support, right? Because we're not going to have the support 24/7. We have to learn how to regulate ourselves. So that's huge. Co-regulation through expression, through somatic yoga, through ecstatic dance, through painting, through writing, whatever that modality is. I would love to share that. Like, if you don't have that in your life, like find that, or find a community that will expose you, right? Kind of like mine, to a multitude of different modalities, so you can see what speaks to you, right? Or you started learning human design and through your artist community, right? Like leaning into your artisan community. Secondly is co-regulation, having the right support, whether that's one-on-one with a therapist or a mentor, in a sisterhood, in a community where you feel safe, just that feeling of feeling supported and feeling held, or just a way to get it out to someone else that resonates with you, or that can help you see beyond your own perspective. Because even me, as much as I know, I still see through my own lens, right? But when you have co-regulation, and again, a wide variety of different modalities and different lifestyles, people, different life experiences, you get a different perspective. And that, I also believe, opens doors. And number three is spirit. I connect to spirit every day. I talk to God, even if I don't pull my cards or have a whole big ritual. It can be something as simple as every morning just saying, thank you, God, I'm alive. And every night before bed, just having gratitude for like what went well that day. It's so easy to see what went wrong. And it's funny, the first card you pulled from Gabby Bernstein's deck was about the way you see the world, something like that, about your perspective, and seeing the good can, I forget exactly what it was, but
I
it was
think
really
it's
beautiful. It
well,
was very me.
yes, my high vibe thoughts create health in my body, peace in my mind, and love in my heart. So I
Yes.
just,
High vibe thoughts. Yeah, and to me, it's when I'm in depression and I can't generate those high vibe thoughts, like God can,
mhm,
spirit can, my angels, I talk to my uncles, I talk to people that have passed. I had a dear friend of mine, who was like a sister that I met when I went on birthright to Israel. And she died at the age of 27. And then she's one of my angels. I keep a picture of her in my office. Like, this is what I lean into, like something bigger than ourselves and what we can see and feel, right? With our naked eyes and our five senses, that connects us to something bigger, gets us out of it.
yeah, I love that. I do the same in the mornings and at night. I say thank you.
Mhm.
I thank God. And there's also a prayer where I say thank you for every good thing and for every bad thing. Like, because that's life, right? There's going to be some good and there's going to be some not so good, but being
Mhm.
grateful because, well, there's that saying where it's working, life is working for us, not against us. Like whatever is
Yes.
happening, it's working for us. Um, so yeah, I love that. So please share with our audience any classes you may uh, have that's coming up, and just your where they could find you on social media or your website.
Yeah, absolutely. Just quickly before that, you said something, the prayer. I also wanted to share. A lot of times I say the Ho'oponopono prayer. If you heard that, the Hawaiian prayer.
Yes,
I just
yes,
love it because it's so simple. Again, I love things that take like 10 seconds, but
yeah,
are such helps, again, high vibration. It helps shift you to that higher vibration. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And I say
yes,
it to myself because forgiving myself has been the hardest thing. I'm so easy to forgive other people, and I'm so an open book, and I'm so loving and so compassionate. But the voice inside my head, and that a lot of times causes anxiety and depression, it's so hard to break that. Like, I still struggle with it every day. And that prayer just, again, helps me lift above that space. It
yes.
pierces the veil between the physical world and the spiritual world. So I just wanted to share that really
Oh, I
quickly.
love that one. I'm glad you put that one in because I remember going through a time where I was really upset at someone. I felt very hurt by them. And one of my family members told me, do this, do this prayer. And it helped me get through that. And
Yes.
sometimes not only you need these blessings, but the other person, you're dealing with, to send them those prayers. I think it's important.
Yes. I do that a lot too. Like I believe in praying for people even when they don't know. Like even people that have hurt me, I always say like, I pray for you. Like I pray for you. I know that it's not me. You're just going through something right now. And I think that's just a huge game changer too. It's just the power of prayer. It's what I posted about yesterday. Just the power of prayer. It
100%.
changes
Yeah.
everything. So
100%.
yeah. But as far as connecting with me, the easiest way is on Instagram. So I want to share. I'm also on Facebook. I have a private Facebook group like you do. Yours is Creative Spirits. Mine is called Alive with Jessica Silverman, which is the name of my podcast. That's also a great way to stay connected with me. I'm also on all major podcast platforms. On Instagram, I'm at MOZEN_wellness. So at Mozen_wellness. So you can DM me, you can reach out to me. I love to connect, outside of this crazy world that we live in and be intimate. And I know that's how we connected. That's why I DM'd you. Like, I just love intimate connections. And the link in my bio, I always share what's going on. Like I said, I've had a lot of family stuff going on and helping my parents move. So I haven't been running the sisterhood as I wanted to in another round. But if you go to the website bit.ly/live vibrant 2024, and just click on that, you can get an idea of the program. I definitely will be running it again in early 2025. But just given like it's already November, the holidays are coming up, I'm like, probably not the best time to run it now. It's kind of a crazy time in the world. And hopefully in January, it'll be a beautiful, fresh start for all of us. So,
Yes. And I'm so happy we connected. I love being part of your Facebook group, by the way. And
oh,
thank you.
thank you.
I enjoy reading what you post on. Sometimes I'm like feeling like not so great, and then I see your post and I'm like lifted up, and just
Oh,
even the
thank
colors you
you.
put,
Yeah.
they're
That's the
very
one thing I've kept alive is I still post almost every day or every other day.
nice.
And I do still work with clients one-on-one now. So again, if anyone's interested to reach out. So
Awesome. Yeah, I highly recommend going to Jessica and trying your one-on-one coaching and also your classes. I really enjoyed them, and I will put everything in the show notes as well, so people could just have the link right there to be able to DM you and get your information.
oh,
So
thank
thank
you.
you
You're
for
such a blessing. And I'm again like I know there's a few times we had to postpone this, but like all in divine timing, like I just
exactly.
know there's a reason why today was the day. And I'm just so grateful for you and everything you bring to my life. Like
Oh, I'm
really,
very
whenever I say all the time online, I'm like, I love you, sister. Like, I really feel like you're a sister to me, and I just
oh,
appreciate you so
likewise.
much.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
I can't wait until we meet one day and
Yes, for
give
sure.
you a big hug and meet in person. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Well, we
Um,
go to California a few times a year, so one of the times I'll have to make it down south a bit from
you
the other side.
do, for sure. So thank you for being here, and this was an amazing conversation. I can't wait to share it with everyone. And it's been a while since I've had like an interview, so
Me too.
you're yeah. So it's nice to have someone to interview, and this was a good
Yeah.
one. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much.